Good evening. The November 21st, 2022 Board of Education special meeting for the Cedar Rapids Community School District is called to order. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the agenda of Monday, November the 21st, 2022 Board of Education special meeting be approved as set forth and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Director Humbles,
Aye.
Director Roundtree,
Aye.
Director Borcherding,
Aye.
Director Merschbach,
Aye.
President Tominski, Vice President Garlock.
Aye. Hazard Young Attia and Associates is joining us this afternoon to present the Leadership Profile Summary Report to the Board, which will require our consideration for approval following discussion. So, Dr. Flynn, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you right now.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be with all of you. Good evening, members of the board, and superintendent, and members of the staff. Kelvin Adams is on the Zoom call, not with a picture, but with audio. Kelvin, are you there? Zoom just went down. Oh, goodness. Here we go. And he's got the first, no, he doesn't, he doesn't have any slides for a couple of minutes anyway. But Kelvin and I are thrilled to be here. Karen Sullivan, who worked with us and is working with us, is had a plane flight scheduled for this time that she couldn't change, and so she's airborne right now and is not going to be joining us. But she was with Kelvin and me 10 days ago when we had the pleasure of meeting and listening to you and to members of the stakeholder group here in Cedar Rapids, and it was a wonderful experience for us, and I'll add some thanks for that in just a couple of minutes. But we met a lot of different people who gave us good things to think about and to note, and that's what we've done in preparation for tonight's Leadership Profile Report. Here we go. So we're hoping that this evening we'll be able to reiterate for you the steps for the leading up to the Leadership Profile Report. We'll share with you some of the results of the survey and also the meeting results, and then show you the steps that we went through to get to a recommended leadership profile listing of desired characteristics for the next superintendent of schools. And those are our hopes and our objectives. This next slide shows the 7 steps that we've taken in the last 33 days since the planning meeting. And you can see that we've done some research. The staff was outstanding in terms of sending invitations out to get people to participate. We put up and then analyzed the survey, and I sent you a little note about that so you can access those reports. And then in terms of interviews and meetings, we did all that on the 11th and 12th, and then we compiled the data and did an analysis of both the survey and the meeting comments that we heard, and prepared the report, and just barely met the deadline to get it in on time so that you could review it adequately prior to tonight's meeting. So just a little more here. We want to extend a personal thanks to Heather Marner and Laurel Day and Colleen Scholar, so for all the things that they did for us, and even Lori out here front, and Nicole, and we thank all of you that worked on behalf of this process and made us feel very welcome and took care of a lot of unforeseen needs that came up over the course of 2 days, and we couldn't have done that and completed the task without the involvement and leadership of the staff, and we're very grateful for that. So, having said that, I'm going to do just a few more slides here and then turn it over to Kelvin. And if he's not ready, that's okay. I have his notes too, so I can take over if we have a technical glitch. But you'll see that the superintendent profile had over 1,000 stakeholders that participated, and the largest groups were teachers and parents. And they represented about 70%, as you can see, of those who participated in the survey. We also had a good turnout from the support staff and the administrators, and then some community members and students participated as well. And all 7 board members took the survey offline, and we hand tallied that and merge that into the leadership profile report that you've received a copy of. Then, so you'll notice on this listing, these are the top 5 strengths that were either agreed or strongly agreed to by all the people that took the survey. And you'll notice there are 3 in bold because of the top 5 for board members. 3 of them were in common with all the people that responded. Now, I want to point out that these are a total aggregation. And as you know, when you look at test results, you like to disaggregate. And so I'm not going to do that tonight, but this is excellent material for when you begin to go to the next iteration of your strategic plan, because this addresses some issues that might be appropriate to your strategic plan. And one of the things that's worth noting is when you disaggregate and look, well, how did the administrators respond, and teachers respond, and community members and parents, and so on. And you will see some significant differences. For example, in this one on top, about 60 or 70% of the overall people agreed or strongly agreed. But the variance ranged from about 40% to 75%. So it's worth looking at that and asking the question, why does that happen? And there are some theoretical suppositions that you could make as to why it might happen, but it'd be good to pursue that as you're looking at your strategic plan. In addition, we asked people to talk about the competencies. And of course, this was a little frustrating for some people because these 12 competencies are based upon a meta-analysis of research on effective superintendents. And so you want all 12 of them. But the question was, which ones are most mission critical for this school district at this point in its history and then looking forward 5 years or more? And so here again, you had some 5 that were overall choices. And then the ones in bold are the ones that were in common by the board. And then we added 2 others that were selected by the board. And our suggestion is that those be included as you put together the profile, because you'll notice that there are these initials after community engagement and teaching and learning and value and visions. And so this adds to that mix that we have here in the first 5 and give a nice balance to it. So consider that as we go along. The board asked that 2 demographic questions be added, and these questions are unique to this survey. We don't often do that, but the board wanted to see what kind of results we might get. Now, we do have the results for all the categories. What we picked off, just to demonstrate to you for this presentation, were the 2 most frequent categories, teachers and parents. So you can get a sense of where they fell in terms of their age and their race. You can also note that there was a significant portion of people who didn't care to share that information. However, what was shared is interesting information to compare that data with the data, the demographic data that's available in the school district. Now, Calvin, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good, just barely. So you might need to use your junior high playground voice. You'll know what
Not a
that
problem
means.
at all. That's not a
Okay.
problem.
Go ahead, Calvin. You take number 9.
Yes. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. As Peter's already indicated, the pleasure of serving you in terms of identifying the best candidates for your school district. It was a pleasure to be in Cedar Rapids. It was really joyful to have conversations with staff. The leadership profile development that you see before you lists 5 indicators in terms of what we did during the for meetings and interviews. These are questions that we ask everyone. All listening meetings were conducted the same way, although the amount of time spent on each of the questions may have varied depending on the size of the group and depending upon the interactions in the group. But the strength of the district was identified, the challenges facing the district, characteristics of the next superintendent, personal attributes, and areas of expertise, administrative style, and what community offers to attract candidates, and names of possible candidates. These were the categories that we looked at. Next slide, Peter, please. The Cedar Rapids C.S.D Leadership Profile Report, we held 27 meetings over a 2-day period of time. Obviously, Peter's already addressed the board interview questions and the feedback from there. 6 persons out of the 7 responded. 2 administrative meetings with approximately 18 people present. The community meetings, there were 6 meetings across the district, inside the district, and we also went to some community venues as well with 13 people. Teachers, licensed staff, 3 meetings, some 20 people. Parents, there were 4 meetings and 15 people. I did, quite frankly, the interview with the 1 student who showed up. It was a fantastic student who provided us feedback about the district. And also the support staff, 5 meetings, and there was 7 people present for those meetings, a total of 80 people altogether. In the listening sessions, we look at the desirable strengths, challenges, and characteristics by respondents' categories from administrators, board, community, teachers, licensed staff. Following the typing of our notes from the meetings, we then looked at the strengths, the challenges, and characteristics I just indicated from the groups that you see here. The most desirable qualities mentioned by the 7 categories, particularly in the leadership traits of attributes, expertise, and style. So once we got all of the information, we took all of our notes together and came up with what you're about to see on slide 12. As it relates to teachers and staff, the district has some outstanding staff who care about students or are passionate about their work. We looked out for each other. They look out for each other and work as a team, skilled and invested in sharing the desire to grow as professionals. That came across in every one of the groups, especially the staff group, dedicated to connecting with and serving students. People are really working hard, caring, and want to work together. This notion of resiliency came through over and over and over again. There were a wide array of programs and courses offered to all students at all levels. So the notion of opportunity was there for students. A special note around fine arts. People generally believe that the growing diversity of the district is a plus culturally and related areas. You may see something on the challenges part relative to that as well. The multiple groups of community partners that are involved and supportive of the school district was something that we heard and observed during our meetings. People were really articulate around the board being welcoming and opening to the partners that are providing services to students and to staff. We also heard about the effective communications that occurred during the flood, during COVID-19. and the notion of resilience again, that the staff has really pivoted to be resilient as they deal with all of the kind of climate changes or challenges that this community has had to deal with. The next slide really talks about the challenges of Cedar Rapids from a staffing, and the top three was staffing, facilities, and diversity and equity. I indicated to you before that they saw it as a real strength, but also as a challenge in terms of how to manage and work with staff as it relates to the changes in the diversity. The good news is that that the list of challenges is shorter than the strengths. And from what we heard, there's more good news in the belief voiced by many of the participants that the district has recognized the issues, meaning putting it on the table. This spoke clearly to the board's willingness to be open and in some areas develop the capacity to address the issues. So the critical notion of a new superintendent coming in is to follow the lead of the board as it relates to understanding what the challenges are and doing something about it. Facilities were seen as a real positive at some of the secondary, at the elementary schools, a real challenge around the elementary schools, the secondary schools rather. But the list is still there to continue the effort and to find funding with obviously the notion of a bond possibly in March kept coming out. The diversity of the community and the student body is, we were told, an increasing number of people who reflect different races, languages, culture, and socioeconomic status, diverse students who require the same opportunities and other educational services and paths available to the general student body. So the notion of nuance between what is needed and the resources aligned to the as relates to staff development, and results for students in programs and recruitment efforts for a more diverse staff, which reflects back to the staffing issue. The notion that while there's staffing shortages across the country, the notion of in Cedar Rapids being targeted around staffing to deal with the diversity that's taking place. The next slide, slide 14, this notion of the leadership characteristics, the community, the stakeholders we talked about this person having to be a visionary, a problem solver, an advocate that really focused on student issues, not necessarily all adult issues, and someone who had people skills. Remember that we had 7 categories of people with whom we had conversations, and all of those persons came back with these as the top categories. In order to get to the final list, a trait or characteristic had to be mentioned as critical in 2 or more categories from all of the groups: students, parents, teachers, licensed staff, administrators, and community. And the attributes, as I just indicated, a visionary, meaning work with the board in determining what the next level of excellence looks like, and then sharing that with the district and the community. A problem solver, someone who is collaborative, and you will hear later, an advocate for students and those who are teaching them, and people skills with respect for others. Someone who, quite frankly, would have the ability to talk to all audiences, not just professionals, and really talk to them and be able to relate to them and validate their work and the fact that they are caring and concerning. The next leadership characteristics was around experience and expertise. The person needed to have prior knowledge or prior skills in terms of being a communicator, achievement and diverse in a diverse district, that where diversity keeps coming back as relates to staff, as relates to the student body, as relates to how do you manage the data around achievement with the diverse population. And human resources, someone who can target and focus, who had experience target and focus on increasing the number of diverse staff, as well as the amount of shortages that are present available in the district, and obviously, as I said before, happening across the country. And someone who was a relationship builder. So someone who had expertise and prior history in these 4 areas. The groups that we spoke to spoke to the need to make sure that the characteristics of the new leader coming in will be able to tackle all 4 of these areas. leadership characteristics in terms of style. That's basically how does the person lead? What's their style? How do they lead in terms of the framework for what people see and say about them? First of all, they have to be visible and approachable. Someone who's collaborative, who's willing to listen, but much more important, not hear rather, but also to listen, to be collaborative and make sure they're not making decisions in isolation, but also someone who's decisive. So once a decision is made after looking at the data, those persons can make a cogent decision. They're not vacillating back and forth, but the decision is a decisive decision based on the data and the ability to collaborate with the stakeholders. And lastly, we combine the information data from the survey with the findings from the interviews and meetings to draft a description of the desired characteristics for the next superintendent. So basically, the survey data that Peter talked a little bit about in a listening session, Peter will now give you an opportunity to see the desired characteristics in the next slide.
Well, here's the crowded slide, but what we tried to do is to list the 7 competencies that were selected by all the respondents to the survey, and including in that the 2 that were, in addition to that, were in the top 5 of the board. And then you can see the other elements that are here. There are 11 elements down at the bottom that our task was to take this and put this into one statement, and that's where we're going, and we're going to show you in the next couple of slides what we came up with. However, we know we've thrown a lot of information at you in a very short period of time, and I just want to take a deep breath here and give you a chance if you have any questions about any of the information that we just shared.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone on the board have questions at this point before we get to the profile?
I have a few questions. On slide 4, it said that you studied publicly available information. What does that mean?
That means we looked at your website, and when we were capable of doing it, we looked at things that were publicly on the internet.
About the district?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, I think that visionary is an important attribute, but I just want to get some clarification if that visionary attribute also means the ability to course correct.
Yes. The visionary is both an attribute and a skill. And the way we heard it, it was both. It was the ability to look at the big picture, but then to engage the other stakeholders, beginning with the board, in the development of that vision, and to make sure that there is understanding and consensus as that vision is developed. It's not something that somebody comes in and pulls out of their pocket and says, here's the vision for Cedar Rapids School District. Rather, it's a process that engages the board and the staff and other stakeholders.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we can continue to the profile.
Okay, thank you. What we did is we started out by talking about the process, and then you'll see we bolded the terms from the previous page. The diverse school district, relationship building, and student achievement. And it's important to emphasize, and we did this when we were talking with people, that they should assume if something gets to this point, that we're talking about somebody that can do these things well. Not just that they've had experiences, but they've had them and can do things well. For example, student achievement improved. More children learned more. And so that's, and this is a little bit ahead of myself, but what we do with what you finally approve is we ask people to explain to us, if we think that this is a person that might be a good fit, we ask people to explain how they did this work of success. And then we ask them to provide us with evidence of success. Information that shows, for example, student achievement that improved, not just overall, but for subgroups over a period of time. And we ask them again, how did you do that work? And then the third step is to talk with people who are familiar with their work, not just those who show up on their resume, but people who should be knowledgeable of their work, and ask them, did this person actually lead that work that brought you an increase in student achievement? So we have those three levels of pursuing people when they tell us that, yes, they fit this profile. Here's the next one. There's the word visionary again. Who listens carefully. This helps modify and explain. Who listens carefully while collaboratively developing and implementing with the board a vision. So that explains it a little more rather than just leaving the visionary out there by itself. And then to be visible and approachable, people and problem-solving skills, and then advocate for students. To be an advocate that reflects the student focus, it means that you can also advocate for those who are working with students too, and because that's a secondary student focus. And then to be decisive and understand about diversity and equity, understand the process of human resources, that showed up in the challenges, and that's not unlike what's going on across the country. There are just a lot of demands being put on that whole category of work and support in school districts. And then finally, student achievement again. And then we listed all the 7 competencies. Usually, when we make a final of this document, we don't leave in the bold unless you prefer that some of them be left in for emphasis and priority. And that sometimes is an effective way to let people know this is a critical element of this document. Now, the last slide here is, did all make it on there? Yeah, they're all on there. And we put at your place a single page that might be a little bit easier to read than trying to read up here, or maybe read the PowerPoint that you might have of that. But what we'd like to do at this point is ask you 2 or 3 questions. And here's the first question. Is there anything you were hoping would be in here that is not in here? Any element or any competency? Secondly, is there something in here that doesn't need to be in here? And we'd like you to focus on competencies and on those attributes, expertise, and style elements. And see where you are in terms of a comfort level, because this is, I told you what we're going to do with it, but we're going to look for candidates using this document. We're going to screen candidates and ask them questions about this profile, based upon this profile. And we're going to suggest that you do a similar thing when you first meet the candidates, that you at least spend some of your time talking about what's in this profile, because we think it's a pretty comprehensive profile based on good input from people, over 1,000 people on the survey, and the people that we talk to in the meetings.
Do we have anything from the board table, anything that you'd hope to see on this profile that isn't there?
I have something. Diversity is discussed quite a bit with diversity, success in a diverse district. But I would like to explore including a diversity in hiring focus.
Other thoughts on that or other additions?
So are you suggesting we add that to
Well,
the
it
ones
says-
that are listed, Director Borcherding?
I guess, or maybe I just need some clarification. It says leading in diversity and equity, especially as they relate to human resources and student achievement. So is that as they relate to human resources, referring to diversity and staffing, intentional?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what it's, that's why it's positioned that way. You know, and we could parenthetically put in there, we could hiring, retention, professional development. You know, those are critical things that
Sure.
usually emanate from the human resources part of the operation.
Okay. I guess I just needed some clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
Anything that's in the profile that we don't think is necessary or a priority? Okay, Peter, I think that those were the two questions. You said there were three, so
Well,
What's
I was
next?
just wondering if you know, if does this reflect your priorities? And if there are some that are more of a priority than others, should some of these be left in bold? That's sort of an editorial question, but it's an important question, because if there are some things like we just talked about, to make sure that when we talk about diversity and equity, we're talking about as they relate to human resources. So is that, or is there anything else that we've bolded here in this copy that ought to remain that way as we circulate this to people who might be interested in this position?
I think that it should, everything that's in bold right now probably should stay in bold.
But when you usually send it out like this and you're trying to focus on what is key, do you usually bold it? Do you put it in bold?
Yes, sometimes. Some people, some boards want it that way, and we leave it the way it is in this, and they say, well, what does that relate to? And then we can send them back to the leadership profile report, and we can show people, here's how this came about, that the board listened to the stakeholders, and these came from the stakeholders and the board. And we always emphasize and the board, because the board, although 7 people, represent thousands of people by virtue of their election. So, yes, but to answer your question, we have left it all in bold, or we've limited to just a couple of items, and it's really the preference of the board.
I'm in agreement with Director Roundtree that is the emphasis, that when I look at those are things that I think are important, that needs to stand out.
right. I agree. I think we went through this process in order to identify these priorities, so let's make it clear
Right.
that these are our priorities.
Great.
Yeah. Other questions or comments? Peter, can you give us just like a broad overview of what happens next before we do our vote here?
Before that, could I add a comment?
Sure,
Because
Director
we're going to
Borcherding.
switch gears.
Yep.
So I just need to point out that it is not lost on me that we're looking for someone that can absolutely walk a fine balance, that we're asking for someone who is collaborative yet decisive. And those items sometimes have a difficult time pairing together. So I just wanted to point out that I think that will be very beneficial for the district to find somebody who has especially both of those attributes.
That's an excellent point, and you know that the nuance that was added to the decisive, as we heard people talk about it, it doesn't mean that they make decisions all by themselves.
Right.
It means that once the decision is made through a collaborative process,
Sure.
that it's valid and it should stay a decision until there is information to the contrary. And I think that's what we heard, and that's what they meant by decisive. Don't tell us this is the decision, and then
Right. Go change
tell
it
us
later.
Then
it's not really the decision,
Right.
or change it.
Right, that's gonna be a mess.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, process was something that people really talked about, respecting the process, particularly when you listen and validate the work, the hard work that people are doing.
Right.
And we became acutely aware of how hard everybody is working in this
Yes.
school district.
Yeah.
So next steps would be for you guys to do your magic, right?
So here we go. So once you approve this tonight, as a board, what we do is we circulate it through our website, and then through our consultants, and then through people that we know professionally. We have been very careful not to engage in conversations with any prospective candidates until this point, because we feel that this direction is key to our search from this point on. And what we will do is we'll contact people, we'll start reaching out to people, we'll share this profile. We'll be talking to people who aren't looking for a job, who are happy where they are, but who don't know about this opportunity. And once we do that, we'll assess on paper and by listening to people that know them and themselves whether or not they might be a good fit, and then we'll start having conversations with them. We'll ask them questions about this. We'll ask them very specific, and we'll share those questions with you. There's nothing secret about it. It's information that you could have, and you might want to use in the future as well. So we'll spend about 5 weeks doing that. And then around, in the first week of January, we'll bring you a slate. So we'll go through that whole process of vetting that I explained to you, and we'll bring to you a slate of people based upon this profile. And you'll have a first round of interviews that first week in January, and then 2 weeks later, you'll bring a smaller group back for a second round of interviews. And we'll assist you in the development of the interview protocol itself, and a suggested script for the interviews, and the suggested script will come from your questions. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be asking you, you have some questions that you think candidates should be asked, and then we'll cluster those questions into groups and provide that guidance for you, and then you'll do the final editing, and you'll prioritize that document too, and you'll begin the interviewing process. And we'll debrief with you at the end of the first round, and we'll debrief with you at the end of the second round.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Okay. So let's move forward here. All those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, sign. With no further business, we stand adjourned.
Thank you very